Apartment delivery. Back in my food delivery days, I had my fair share of strange encounters, but one night stands out as the weirdest and scariest of them all. I had started working as a food delivery driver after high school to save up money for college. It wasn't the most glamorous job, but it was flexible and I could make good money, especially on weekends. I also enjoyed the job because it allowed me to drive around and explore the city. I was a bit of a loner and I liked the idea of being by myself for a few hours each night. One snowy winter night, I was working late. It was just after midnight and I was ready to call it a day, but then I received one last order. It was a big order from a customer on the outskirts of town. I hesitated for a moment. I had never been to that part of town before, and I knew it was a rough neighborhood, but I decided to take the order anyway. I was hoping for a good tip. I picked up the food from the restaurant and started driving. The roads were mostly empty and the snow was falling heavily. I jumped onto the highway and followed the app to the customer's address. I pulled up to the address and saw that it was an old run-down apartment building. The building was dark and silent, and I couldn't see any lights on inside. I started to get uneasy. I thought about calling the customer to make sure they were expecting me, but then I decided against it. I didn't want to seem like a wimp. I got out of my car and walked up to the apartment building. I took a deep breath and entered the building. The lobby was dark and musty. I could smell the stench of urine and garbage. I took the stairs to the third floor, where the customer's apartment was located. The hallway was even darker and more sinister than the lobby. The only light came from a single flickering bulb at the end of the hall. I reached the customer's door and knocked. I waited for a moment, but there was no answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Still no answer. I started to get uneasy. I took my phone out to call the customer, but just as I was about to dial, the door creaked open. A man stood in the doorway. He was middle-aged with messy hair and a worn-out bathrobe. His eyes were red and bloodshot, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't say a word, he just held out his hand for the food. I handed him the bag and he paid me with a crumpled wad of cash. As I was counting the money, I noticed that the man's hands were shaking. He also had a strange, terrified look in his eyes. "Is everything okay in there?" I asked. The man hesitated for a moment, then he leaned in close and whispered, "No, not at all." Before I could ask anything else, the man abruptly closed the door in my face. I stood there for a moment, confused and uneasy. I could hear the man's voice from inside the apartment, raised in conversation. It sounded like there were other people in there with him. I decided to leave. I turned and walked down the hallway, my footsteps echoing in the silence. As I got closer to the stairs, I heard the man's voice again, this time raised in fear. "They're coming," he shouted. "Run." I didn't need to be told twice. I turned and ran down the stairs. I could feel my adrenaline rush as I heard the sound of voices and footsteps coming from behind me, chasing me. I ran out of the building and into the snow. I didn't stop running until I was all the way back to my car. I jumped in and sped away, leaving the apartment building and the strange man behind me. I never found out who the man was or what was happening in the apartment, but I never forgot the look of terror in his eyes. And I never went back to that apartment building again. Uber Eats gone wrong. I was an Uber Eats delivery driver in London, and I had been working for about a year. I had seen a lot of strange things in that time, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened one night. It was a Saturday night and I was busy delivering orders. I had just received an order for a large quantity of food from a customer in Brixton. I had never delivered to this address before, but I knew it was a rough neighborhood. I arrived at the address and saw that it was a large warehouse. I parked my car and walked up to the front door. It was unlocked, so I went inside. The warehouse was dark and empty. I could hear the sounds of voices coming from a room in the back. I walked towards the room and knocked on the door. "Uber Eats delivery," I said. The door opened and I saw a group of young men standing in the room. They were all wearing puffer jackets and tracksuits. Finally, one of the guys said, "We've been waiting for you." The man took the food from me and quickly opened it to inspect it. "There's something missing from the order," the man said. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "One of the pizzas is missing," he said. I told him I checked the order before I left the restaurant and it was there. The man laughed. "You're mistaken," he said. "All of the pizzas are here," I told him. I knew that he was lying, but I didn't want to argue with him. I just wanted to get out of there. I turned to leave, but the man blocked my way. "You're not going anywhere," he said. The other gang members surrounded me. I was trapped. "What do you want?" I asked. They brought me into a room and demanded that I get them more pizzas or I'm going to get hurt. I was terrified and I could barely speak. There was about 12 of them in the room, and it was full of smoke from all of them smoking. I told them I don't have any pizzas left, but they didn't like my answer. They started talking to each other, saying all the horrifying things they would do to me if I didn't get them more, like how they would cut me up and leave me here for dead. My heart sank. I could tell that they were dead serious, and these weren't empty threats. I had no other choice but to tell them I would get more pizzas, and finally they let me go. However, 3 of them followed me to make sure I was going to bring more. I quickly accepted the next delivery order for another pizza delivery and went to hand it all to the 3 guys that were following me. Afterwards, they said, "You can go now. Just make sure you don't snitch or we'll find out where you live and come for you." I never knew a simple delivery could be such a nightmare. I had no choice but to give the pizzas to them and receive a negative review for this, and I then made up an excuse for it because I was too afraid to say the truth or call the police, thinking they would find out where I lived and hurt my family. A remote delivery. I had been looking forward to getting my driver's license for as long as I could remember. I had always loved cars and I couldn't wait to be able to drive myself around. Finally, the day came when I turned 16 and could finally take my driver's license test. I was so nervous, but I passed on the first try. I was so excited to have my license, and I immediately started looking for a job. I knew that I wanted a job where I could use my driver's license. I didn't want to just work at a fast food restaurant or a grocery store. I wanted to do something more exciting. I saw an ad for a delivery driver at a local pizza joint. I knew that it would be a tough job, but I was up for the challenge. I went in for an interview and got the job on the spot. I needed the money from my job to help pay for my car and to save up for college. I also wanted to have some extra money to spend on clothes and entertainment. I started working at the pizza joint the following week. I liked being able to drive around and to meet new people. I also liked the fact that I had more freedom to choose my shifts and work different hours. I usually covered the day shift since I was still new, but a couple of times a month I would get some night shifts as well. It was a late and rainy night and I was the only delivery driver on shift at the pizza place. I had been working there for a few months, but it was my first time working a night shift alone, so I had to handle all of the deliveries. As it was getting really late, we had a strange call for a pizza delivery. The customer had ordered 3 large pizzas, and the address was a good 20 minutes outside of town, to a remote farmhouse. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I should call the manager and ask him to send someone else. But I knew that he was busy with other things, and I didn't want to be a bother. So I grabbed the pizzas, got in my car, and started driving. The drive to the farmhouse was uneventful enough, but as I got closer, I started to get a bad feeling. The road was narrow and the trees were so thick that they blocked out most of the moonlight. Finally, I arrived at the farmhouse. It was a large old house with a wraparound porch. The paint was peeling and the windows were boarded up. It looked like it had been abandoned for years. I parked my car and got out. The rain was coming down heavily now, and I could barely see a few feet in front of me. I fumbled for my phone and turned on the flashlight. I walked up to the front door and knocked. There was no answer. I knocked again, louder this time, and there was still no answer. I started to feel uneasy. What if the customer wasn't here? What if I had driven all the way out here for nothing? I was about to turn and go back to my car when I heard a noise coming from inside the house. It was a faint moaning sound, like someone was in pain. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I took a deep breath and knocked on the door again. "Hello," I called out. "Is anyone there?" The moaning stopped. I waited for a moment, but there was no answer. I slowly reached for the doorknob and turned it. The door creaked open, revealing a dark hallway. I hesitated for a moment, then took a step inside. The house was cold and damp, and the air smelled musty. I called out again, but there was still no answer. I started to walk down the hallway, my footsteps echoing. The floorboards were creaking with every step I took. I could feel the cold air on my skin, and my heart was still pounding in my chest. I came to a door at the end of the hallway. I hesitated again, then turned the doorknob and opened the door. I stepped inside and found myself in a large living room. The furniture was covered in dust sheets and the windows were boarded up. The only light was coming from the flashlight on my phone. I could see the outline of a rocking chair in the corner of the room. The moaning sound was coming from there. I slowly walked over to the rocking chair and saw a hunched over man sitting in it. "Hello," I said, my voice trembling. "Is everything okay?" The man didn't answer. He just kept rocking back and forth. I took a step closer to the man. "I'm here to deliver a pizza," I said. The man stopped rocking and slowly raised his head and looked at me. I gasped in horror. The man's face was pale, and he looked old and bony, and his breath smelled disgusting. "Pizza?" the man said in a raspy voice. I nodded, too terrified to speak. He reached out his bony hand and took the pizzas from me, and quickly opened up one of them and took a huge bite out of it. He was chewing loudly and making a mess, dropping grease and cheese on his chin. He devoured the whole pizza in less than a minute and licked his lips and smiled. "Now it's your turn," he said. I started to get a bad feeling, and I thought it was strange that he would offer some of the pizza to me. But then he started walking towards me and said, "I just want a bite." Now my heart started pounding in my chest, and I quickly backed away and turned around the corner to run to the front door. But as I looked over, I saw 2 more people coming in through the door, so I turned and ran the other way instead. I quickly found myself running downstairs to what looked like a basement. I locked the door and waited, hoping they wouldn't find me. The room I was in contained some sort of chilled storage container. I opened it to see what was inside, and I couldn't believe my eyes. There was human flesh being preserved and stored in this place. I felt sick to my stomach, like I was about to vomit. I began to tremble, realizing what the man was saying earlier about it being my turn and wanting a bite. He's a cannibal, and the people who are at the door must be with him. They probably placed the pizza order just to lure me here. I searched around the room and I found a shelf in the corner. I pushed it aside, and behind it was an old concealed egress window. I didn't hesitate and climbed out as fast as I could, checking my surroundings to make sure nobody was outside. I ran straight to my car and quickly started it, while looking towards the house. I could barely see anything, except for 2 flashlights that suddenly appeared to be coming towards my car. I drove off quickly and never looked back. I told my manager what had happened and we called the police. It turns out that it was a group of cannibals luring people to the abandoned house to kill and eat them. Unfortunately, when the police arrived, there was nobody there, and since they were using an old remote house address to make these delivery calls, they weren't able to trace anything and track the culprits down. This is the most terrifying thing I have ever experienced in my life. The thought that I could have been eaten alive by other humans sickens me, and I can't believe they are still out there. If you have any scary stories to share, you can send them over to storiesofdespairbusiness@gmail.com.